Every day, because Donald Trump is the president, we as Americans are forced to deal with him and the way he communicates with us. We have to process the biglies and the strongs and the randomly putting quotation marks around things and referring to himself as Trump and all of the little linguistic quirks about Donald Trump. We deal with it, but we don't necessarily have the expertise, the training, or the time to actually analyze it. But there are people who have. And they have produced the new book, Language in the Trump Era, Scandals and Emergencies. And we are very lucky to be joined by linguistics expert and editor of that book, Norma Mendoza-Denton. Welcome to the Damage Report.
Thank you for having me. I just want to also give a shout out to my co-editor, Professor Janet McIntosh from Brandeis University.
Awesome, and you've collected so many different writers who have come together to produce this. So you're a linguistics expert. Tell me a little bit about how this project came about. What was the sort of mission of it?
I think for my part, I had already been thinking about language and masculinity, especially in terms of political campaigns and political thought in Mexico. So I'm originally from Mexico, and when the former president Vicente Fox came onto the scene in Mexico, he kind of shocked the public by doing a lot of swearing and a lot of posturing and calling his opponents names, and all of the opponents were also shocked and implied that this was no fitting behavior for a president. And so when it came time to the 2016 campaign, I saw the same thing kind of recurring with Donald Trump. And that's what got me interested in all of the linguistic things that wound up going down. And he similarly shocked the public and commentators and his opponents, who just simply refused to believe that this type of personality could land in the presidential seat. And so he did. Right around the same time, Professor McIntosh, who's been working a lot with veterans and military speech in general, also had the same idea. We should put together this panel. We went to the American Anthropological Association, put together a blockbuster panel, and walked out with a book contract. So that's what happened. After that, it was just herding cats.
I can only imagine what that project must have been like. But so in the intro to this, I gave a few of the things that stand out to me about the way Trump speaks and all of that. You obviously come at it from an academic background. What are some of the ways that you would characterize Trump's use of language? What are some of the highlights that differentiate him from other Americans, other politicians, other presidents?
Okay, well, one of the I'm going to refer to specific authors who have written within the volume about this. So one thing that really struck all of us was that when Trump appearingly seems incoherent, it's not really entirely incoherent. So he might say, for instance, if you just look at the work of, if you look at Sidney Blumenthal has been in the news all this time, and everybody's going, who is that? Right? Why is this relevant? So then, all of the media people jump up and look this up, right? And so this is, I think, the first president that we've had to have essentially exegesis of everything he says. There has to be like a side column explaining all of these pure things he's referring to. Like, is this something he made up? Is this an actual word? Is this some kind of dog whistle or a veiled reference? So there's a way in which he might seem incoherent at first glance, and Professor Slaughter has a chapter on the significance of his incoherence. Another thing that has really stood out to everybody was the idea of plausible deniability. So Adam Hodge just writes on this, and he says that essentially what you have is this idea that you're going to put forward a statement that in the end doesn't hold water or can be denied in some way, right? So let's take, for instance, the coronavirus will disappear situation, right? He said it when it started. He still said it, I think, yesterday, right? Just you watch, it's all going to disappear. Well, yes, all things will disappear eventually, right? The entire earth will pulverized to dust. At some point, the coronavirus will disappear, or it will mutate into something else, and he will say, "See, that was it. It went away on its own. Only 200 years later." Right? So he's, the way that he manipulates and skirts the deniability of what he's going to say always makes it so that, oh, it wasn't me who said that. It was you who thought that. Right? I didn't say that. I didn't say, she was menstruating when I said blood coming out of her wherever. That's you. You have a dirty mind.
Yeah.
So there's
100%.
In Spanish, we call this flipping the tortilla, right? He flips the tortilla, and then suddenly it was you.
That's clever. I haven't heard that before. I like that. I don't know if this is directly related to that, the plausible deniability, but look, I find fascinating the gap between, I'm just a person that has had to listen to way too much of him, and you are a person who comes at this from, a sort of rigorous scientific level of analysis. And so there's a thing that he does that I would love to get your opinion for. To be a little bit crude there, I would term it as the way a dumb person speaks to hide their lack of knowledge. So he will, perhaps 25% of what he says is, like you've never believed, nobody's ever seen it, nobody could have imagined. We've done things that people would have never predicted. He used these sorts of grandiose, hyperbolic statements. To me, I read those as there's nothing specific said, no information is actually given. Again, there's a little bit of plausible deniability. I assume that his followers sort of fill that in. They fill in those gaps to make it seem like he's really saying something. Is that a tactic? What is he doing there?
I mean, that's called under-specification, if you want a kind of technical term. But the idea is that, okay, so one thing that I noticed, and you guys have talked about it on your show, is that he sees himself as the primary cheerleader. And part of the, being a cheerleader is, to cheer the uncheerable, and you hide bad information. So in order to do that and to set yourself up as the pinnacle of knowledge, capability and power, you're going to have to say that you're the best at everything. So everything winds up with a superlative. So it's like you've never believed. This is the best country in the world. We are the highest life form in the universe. I mean, it just keeps going, right? And because there is no real counterfactual to that, like there's no counterfactual that can be offered to absolute superlative like that. And so he winds up kind of getting away with it. So to some people, it will sound like he's just using filler words, this under-specified reference, like some people were on a plane, some people were wearing masks. So, I mean, all of this under-specification allows both things, right? It allows him to A, get out of it, and B, to claim that, we have the best economy on the planet, we have the best response to COVID, I am the only thing standing between you and total chaos.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.